Hello Spartans! This time we want to talk about what are some actual things that you can do within Relay Classroom to help monitor your students and make your class run efficiently. So here I am at my Olympia 2019 kind of test class here. And we'll see that right now this class is not in session. So the custom schedule that I had set up does not say that this class is currently meeting, but it does still show me the students that are supposed to be in that class. They're just grayed out. So in order to get started here, I'm going to need to switch this to an ad hoc. So I'm going to go down here to the class settings and switch from the custom schedule to ad hoc and press start. Now I have found that when I've been playing around with this, the student doesn't necessarily automatically get pulled in if they already have their Chromebook up and running and then you start the class. So I'm going to go up here and refresh the page. And after I do that, things should be working properly. You'll see that the student name will switch from being grayed out to being dark black. And we start to get some information. So here we have the website that student's currently browsing in. We have their most viewed websites, and we have a number that represents the number of recent sites that they've gone to. I've been testing things out, so 33 is a pretty high number. Along the left side here, you're going to see some other general information. So by default, all of your students are set to a working status. There's also a need help and a done status. And then up at the top, you will find some quick buttons to share that student's screen with everybody in the class, to lock down all of the screens so that they cannot interact with the Chromebook, and then to filter the internet. And those settings will apply to everybody in your class if you choose them. Now, for an individual student, I can click on them and we will get some information pulled up. So you can see off to the side there a real-time monitoring of where that student is. So on my Chromebook over here, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to another site, and you'll see all of that happening in real time. As a teacher, you can click on any one of these menu items at the bottom here, and these represent the tabs that your students have open on their Chromebook. So you can actually click on them, and it is physically moving that student around on the Chromebook. So you can quickly see anything that they are accessing. You can also close out of these if you want to, and it'll close them on their Chromebook. I can go into the browsing history and search and see what they've been looking at recently. I can also look at any recordings that I have of these students. And then finally, from this top menu here, I can send them a message. So I can send a message that says, need help, and that's going to pop up on their screen. And the student then has the ability to say yes or no. And if they say yes, you'll notice that they switch over to that need help category. And off here to the side, you'll see that they are also in that need help section. Before I leave here, there are a couple other things we can do. We can share this student's screen with everybody by clicking on this button. I can also individually lock this student by clicking on the next icon and unlock them. And then finally, I can start one of those recordings that I just mentioned. So if you want to, and the student does not realize that that recording is happening when you press that. So if you see something odd going on and you want to not just take a screenshot but get a little recording of their activity, you can do that. So I'm going to back out of here and go back to our main screen. Again, notice that their icon has changed to this question mark, and they are now in this need help category. If I had, a regular class of 20 to 25 students, they are all going to be separated out into these different groups based on their needs. So you can work with your students and let them know that they can use their classroom extension that's going to be up in their extension bar, and they can mark themselves as working, need help, or finished. and then that can make your life a little more efficient. You can also break down these groups from right here. So if I just want to look at the students who have flagged themselves as needing help, I can do that, and it'll filter everybody down. I can also pin different students to the top of this list. So if you have a couple of students that you're particularly worried about and want to monitor and always have them up at the top, you can go ahead and pin them and do that. You'll see there's two different ways to view this list. List view is the default, but I can also pop over into this heat map view, which is really only going to get interesting when I have a lot of students here. And you'll see this recent websites is how the heat map is going to be displayed. So students who have not visited many websites recently are going to be a lighter color, and the ones that have visited a lot of websites, which might be an indication that they're getting off task or bouncing around and not staying focused, will be darker in color. So it could be a quick way for you to figure out who you want to go and touch base with. You can also switch this view to saying show all screens. And it's going to warn you here that this may slow things down. I'm not sure yet how much that will impact the system, but we can try it out once school starts. If we hit continue, you're going to actually see that live feed of all of the students pop up there on your screen. So the last piece to mention is up here at the top we have this area called Insights, and I'm not able to display this because I don't have a full class of students, but what the intent of this area is if my tech student was, let's say they had 6 or 7 different tabs open and they were constantly bouncing back and forth between those tabs, and that activity was unique to them, so the rest of the class tended to just stay on 1 or 2 tabs and work quietly, that student is going to pop up here into the Insights area, and it's just going to do that automatically. And the idea is that those would be the students that you may want to go and touch base with because their activity on their Chromebook seems just different from everybody else's. Now, of course, sometimes that's going to be perfectly natural, but it might be a quick way for you to get a visual on who you want to go and meet with individually quickly, just to make sure that they're on task. So the final thing we'll talk about here is up in this upper left-hand corner, you have this internet access option. So default means that they're open and they're only filtered the way that they are naturally filtered. You can also do things like turn the internet off, which means they do not have access to go anywhere. And you then have the option to do these custom sets of websites. Now, this is different than GoGuardian because as of this time, you cannot set up a number of different scenarios, like today's a quiz day, today's a research day, and have different websites in the allowed list that your students can go to. That's a feature that hopefully will come soon, but it's not there right now. So your basic options are to restrict browsing based on whatever websites you put in. So in this case, I put in essentially all of the main Google sites. And then if I chose this custom internet access, they would be locked down to just basically working on their productivity items. And then your other option is to block everything except what I have listed. So in that case, you would type in maybe something like YouTube, and then they'd be able to go everywhere except for YouTube. This is not as feature-rich as what GoGuardian was at the time, so you can play around with it, but hopefully they will add the ability to do more scenarios in the future. And the last thing to mention is that down here you have this option to say, I'm going to restrict their access to the internet, but when they change their status to done, then their internet access flips back to the default regular school policy access. You can play around with that. Obviously, it sounds like students may just switch themselves over to done because they can do that themselves and then go where they want to go to kind of bypass whatever sort of custom internet access you have set up. But you can play around with it in your classroom. If you have your norms set up so that your students are not kind of trying to sneak around that, then maybe this could work well. So those are all of the basic features of things you can do within Relay. And then before I leave, I'm going to say that it's best practice that before you end your class and you transition into the next one, you should always come up here and double check your internet access and make sure it's always set back to default. Because I have noticed that even if we stop this class and we're not monitoring anymore, if the internet access was set to off or to custom, that student of mine was still filtered that way, even though they were not being monitored. So always check to see that this gets put back to default at the end of your class period. So I hope to get out into your classrooms and help you set this up and make it as efficient as possible to help you out in class. These sorts of monitoring softwares are not required, and by all means you can still use the good old tried and true method of walking around your classroom and monitoring your students that way as well.